In this week's episode of StudioInter, we'll be discussing Inter's win over Lazio, the defeat against Juventus. We'll be discussing with Sheridan Bird from Juve TV. We'll be previewing the derby della Madonnina, this week's Moggi, Moratti and Frog, and much, much more. Everything here on StudioInter, on SempreInter.com. Benvenuti, bentornati to another edition of Studio Inter. I'm your host, Nima Tavallaey, who is feeling really rather good about himself and life in general, as I'm sure most Inter fans are this Monday when we are recording this. But before we get to all of that, let me introduce my panelists, starting with the SempreInter.com preview writer, who I think no longer is the only person who can lay claim to the title Mr. Positivity, Mr. Mohamed Nassar.
Yeah, it's all fun and games to say that you're positive when you're sitting pretty at the top of the table. Huh? The hard work when you're pulling up, trying to come up to first. But anyway, I know it's great to be here. Great feeling. I think absolutely deserved. So really looking forward to getting into this podcast.
For sure. And we're also joined by our resident refereeing expert. He's a producer over on TSN in Canada, Mr. Michael Gallo.
I woke up this morning with a big smile on my face.
I'm sure you did.
And that smile is still there right now. It's been a few hours. I'm excited. I'm happy. And I'm glad. I'm excited to talk with you guys about the week or so with Inter.
And we're also joined by SempreInter.com's chief news editor, Mr. William Beckman, who I suspect is also very happy.
I am, but I would just say on Mo, if I were Mo, I'd do a sort of Conte after Bergamo at the moment. You know, now you're all coming aboard the bandwagon. Where were you when it was tough? You know, I've been travelling elite for 6 months, and you haven't protected me.
Antonio Nassar, Mohamed Conte, whichever you prefer.
he would be well within his rights to do that.
Yes, he would. But we're going to get into all of that because we have so much to talk about. We have a very special guest. He who comes on quite every now and again on Studio Inter. He's the English commentator for Juventus TV. Welcome back, Mr. Sheridan Bird.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Good evening, everybody.
Good to have you. I mean, let's start with the Juventus Inter of the past 14 days, I guess you can say. I want to ask you a little bit about that because, I mean, I'm assuming you commented the Juventus Inter game, the return leg at the Allianz Stadium. I'm keen to hear your thoughts about both of these ties. I personally thought the game was the tie was over after Juve won away against at the San Siro, and for me it was kind of just playing out the cards at the Juventus at Allianz Stadium, as it's now called. I'm keen to hear what your thoughts were about these two matches.
Yeah, I agree with you. It was over after the first leg because not all of your listeners might know, but away goals do count in the Coppa Italia. I've always found away goals in domestic competitions to be a nonsense because they have it in the League Cup, or they did for a long time in England in the League Cup, which I think is, away goals in the same country. If you're talking about Juventus and Inter, away goals 45 minutes away on the train seems a little bit weird. But anyway, that is the rule. And Juventus were already through. Second leg, I think, for Inter was more about putting on a good show, restoring the pride and giving themselves some belief more than anything. And they did that. I mean, they didn't win, but 0-0 at Juventus. Not many teams will do that. So I thought, like you, they were already out, but it was important that they went to the Allianz Stadium and gave a good account of themselves. And, to be quite honest, they looked at the same level as Juventus, which is probably what they want to. Well, they want to be at the level above, but you know what I mean. They didn't look out of their depth.
For sure. There were quite a bit of controversy surrounding this tie, especially the return leg. And I, for one, having grown up with a Serie A where Inter and Juve and Milan are always fighting for titles at the top, and the animosity and childishness and pettiness for me, this was beautiful. Listening, hearing the way that Conte was insulted and the way that he flipped the bird back, not your kind of bird, but the more rude kind of bird, and then the subsequent, back and forth between them and the ruckus that ensued. I'm keen to hear what you think about all of this.
Well, no, I mean, like you, in a sense that we're seasoned enough to remember when football wasn't as sanitized and it wasn't as user friendly. It was. I would say it was relatively amusing to see wealthy grown men acting like teenagers. It was just silliness, but the stakes were high. And you know what you get with Antonio Conte, as people have been saying for years, particularly you, Nima, that he is a passionate man from the south of Italy. And Agnelli and Nedved and Paratchi were obviously very happy that they'd navigated their way to another final. So, yeah, fireworks were to be expected. It wasn't vicious or nasty. It was just, silly men some had had their pride hurt. Others were trying to rub their old colleague and in some cases friend's nose in it. So yeah, I agree with you in the sense that it was amusing to see. It didn't go overboard, thankfully, and it made some headlines. And every now and then it's good to see that kind of thing if it's controlled and not if it spills over.
I'm going to hand you over to Mo. Did you have a question for Sheridan?
Yeah, Sheridan. So now we can do a little mini gloat. But of course, no one wants to count their chickens or their eggs before they hatch. But so I want to ask you, now that Inter are maybe possibly putting some real distance, genuine distance between themselves and Juventus, who is Juventus? Who are Juventus this season? We've seen a lot of different permutations or versions of the same squad, of the same team, expressing football differently, expressing attitude differently and results differently. The Juventus that we saw against Inter at the San Siro in the Coppa is definitely not the Juventus that showed up at the San Siro in the league, and is definitely not the Juventus that traveled to the Diego Armando Maradona Stadium over the weekend. So who is Juventus? Do you guys know? Is there an identity that they're trying to figure out? Or is there what's up? What's the deal?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, it's still the team with the best defence and the best individual defenders. I don't think that's beyond doubt. Giorgio Chiellini, I think, temporarily forgot about the VAR on Saturday, but he's been brilliant this season, I have to say. So I still think it's the best team. If you go man for man, it's still, to me, the best team in Serie A. They're trying to play a more possession-based, quick-moving, passing football. You hear Pirlo from the sidelines for every match imploring his players to move the ball quickly. So they are trying to change the way they play. And also for those who like tactics, who like football in general, Serie A fans, for example, watching the shapes that Andrea Pirlo has employed, particularly in defence, I think has been quite interesting. But it's still, to me, it's still a work in progress. Moratti has gone a bit quiet since the new year. Dyballa's obviously been injured, but I still think they are a dangerous team for fans of Inter or Milan in terms of the Scudetto. I still think there's a long way to go. I know Inter are very happy about being Capolista because I live in Milan, so all I've had all day is people saying we're top of the league. And I've said, enjoy it. No, they should genuinely enjoy it because it's nice for them to, to have some time in the sun. The derby is going to be absolutely massive. I am looking forward to watching that. A 3:00 derby. I'm sure Nima can correct me if I'm wrong, but it'll be a 3:00 Central European derby. I'm looking forward to watching that with friends. So yeah, I still think, despite all that though, I still think Juventus, you can't write them off. You can never write them off. Really, you can't. And it's a long way to go. The gap isn't that far. Inter's advantage, though, which I'm sure we'll get into later, or you guys will, is the fact that they have taken the wise decision to extricate themselves from the cup competitions.
But my question, sorry, just to follow on, Sheridan. What I mean is this? So maybe I didn't articulate my question well enough. But do you feel that this is a team that is that there is a project to build on, or is this a transitional period? Is this? Are there enough building blocks for Pirlo to build a new project on, or is this going to be a couple of seasons of transition under Pirlo or under someone else's guidance? I think this is really what I meant to ask. You know, do you see something there that you believe that Juventus can build on for the coming 3 or 4 or 5 years, or is this a real end of a cycle with with Ronaldo aging, whatever, the midfield woes? We know all about Juventus's midfield woes ever since they lost Pogba and Vidal, etc. So is there something that can be built on today, or does the club need to go through a couple of years of transition now and rebuild for a couple of seasons later?
Well, I think the first answer to that is that clubs like Juventus and where they see themselves, i.e. Real Madrid and Bayern Munich, they don't get 2 seasons to rebuild. So I'm not contradicting you for the sake of it, but they don't allow themselves this much time. I think the building blocks are there. I think if you take away Chiellini and Bonucci, which I know Nima would like to do, you still have a very, very impressive central defensive partnership in de Ligt and Demiral. Then in midfield, you have McKennie, who's looked a bit tired the last few weeks, but is still an incredible prospect. And then you have Federico Chiesa, who is perhaps not making tons of friends outside half of Turin, but is still an incredible player. Bentancur is a young man. So to answer your question, I think the building blocks are there, and that's why I think they've got the future already sort of bedded in. Plus the old veterans, like you said, like Cristiano Ronaldo, Gigi Buffon for the Cup, and the defenders I mentioned. So to be quite honest, I just don't think there's going to be a season of transition for 2 reasons. One, the players who are the next generation have already got a lot of games under their belt. And 2, big clubs can't have transitions because you can get left behind. We've seen it happen. It's there's no time for big transitions or long transitions at big clubs.
No, it certainly isn't. Mike, did you have a question for Sheridan?
Yes, Sheridan. Here, my question for you is: if Juve don't win the Scudetto and say they don't win Champions League, and even if they win Coppa Italia or not, who do you think the blame will be on? Like, I'd say, like, majority-wise, in terms of like, is the season a failure if they don't win the Scudetto? Like, would Pirlo come out as the kind of like the scapegoat, as in being most of the fault is on him? Would it be the players, Agnelli? Who do you think the majority of the blame will go on?
Well, a lot depends on the Champions League, to be quite honest. I would say if they don't win the Scudetto, but they do win the Coppa Italia, and they get to the semi-final of the Champions League and lose with honour, so to speak, I think Pirlo will get a lot of. I think he'll get a lot of latitude, in the sense that I think the people behind the scenes like what he's done so far. So unless things go very, very wrong in the Champions League, which we know they can do at Juventus, and I'm sure that's a source of amusement for you guys, it is for most of Italy. But when things go wrong in terms of Champions League football, Juventus, they do go wrong in a ridiculous manner. But I think there's a lot of patience and admiration and love for Pirlo from the people who hired him, not just from his fans. So, I think it would have to be a really disastrous exit of the Champions League and finishing outside the Champions League places for Pirlo to be fired. I think there were names that the club would like to have hired a few years ago, but they didn't materialise. They went for Pirlo, and I think they'll give him time, because there is a pattern to the way the team play. But as I say, the round of 16 of the Champions League is around the corner, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But Pirlo has a lot of credit in the bank.
He sure does. Will, did you have a question?
Yes. Hi, Sheridan. Thanks for joining us. I just wanted to ask about Christian Eriksen, who I'm sure we're going to be talking about a little bit more later in the show. But obviously, he was slightly surprisingly started in that sort of midfield role in that match that you commentated on Tuesday alongside Brozovic, as opposed to the playmaker position where he's been playing in the last few weeks. I suppose this is a question that's maybe more suited to the Lazio game as opposed to the Juventus one, because he showed a lot more against Lazio than he did against Juventus. But do you think that after 12 months of Conte saying, or very much hinting, that he couldn't play there, do you think there's reason to believe, given what you've seen in the last week or so, that actually that he can play with Brozovic, and that it was just a matter of, I don't know, time or motivation or being a bit more confident? Is this an actual revival, or is this just because he's feeling confident because he scored the winner in the derby and in a month he'll be back on the bench? Because I think it feels a bit more sustainable the way that he's in the team now. But then some people didn't like the way he played against Juventus. So I wondered what you made of this latest attempt to resurrect his career.
Well, Eriksen's a very interesting case in the sense that there's been so much hearsay about him. I remember speaking quite a lot via WhatsApp and various messages to Nima, saying that what everyone says in this city, what everyone says in Milan, is that Conte didn't even want him. It was a signing by Ausilio or someone else within the organisation. So Conte, for quite a while, didn't use him, spoke disparagingly about Eriksen to try and make a point. And then I think he started to realise that actually this guy is quite a good player. He's not the most athletic, or obviously he's not the quickest, and he might need some time to settle in. He came to a city about 3 weeks before it became the world capital of COVID. So it can't have been easy for Christian Eriksen either. And he went from playing at a club, Spurs, where Mourinho in theory defends, or in private really defends and tries to motivate his players, to a place where the manager Antonio Conte tried to make it clear to people even on the moon that it wasn't his choice. But like you say, this could be a turning point. I hope it is. He's a wonderful player. Brozovic, apparently was fantastic against Lazio. So the Brozovic and Erickson tandem, might work well. They both have very different skills and abilities. But if I can sort of just mould your question into something else, with all due respect, it's the person that people are absolutely crackers about here in the positive sense is Nicolo Barella.
For sure. I mean, and they have every right to do so, because he's been, well, right now he's probably the best player in the Serie A. He's definitely the best midfielder in the Serie A right now, that is. I before we let you go, I want to hear your thoughts on this incredibly exciting Scudetto race. How do you think it's going to end? Because and who do you think will win between Juve and Atalanta in the Coppa Italia?
Oh, that's the killer questions always come from the hands of Nima. But that's good. That's good. The Scudetto race, it's a really difficult one. I've been saying for ages that I think Juventus will have too much for everybody, because they normally do. You don't win 9 in a row, just by chance. Milan were very difficult to explain because, when they had 15 players injured, they were brilliant. They've got a fit squad back now, and they lost to Spezia. So Milan, it's a difficult one to predict. Inter look like they're on a mission. The old Sir Alex Ferguson siege mentality, where everyone's against us, everyone hates us. Antonio Conte has embraced that, let's say. So, Inter now they've got their teeth into top spot, and they've got no cup competitions. Inter, I think, are going to sweat blood. They're going to give absolutely everything to stay at the top. So it's a tough one, because I honestly think that if they can keep everyone fit, and they've got a very strong chance because of fewer games, Inter, if they really, really band together and get as stubborn and obstinate and determined and other adjectives that Nima would use in private as Antonio Conte, Inter have got a massive chance to bring the Scudetto back to the city of Milan. AC Milan themselves, these are crucial times. I mean, I think I read the other day that they lost more matches this month than they did in 2020. I would honestly, I would not have said this a week ago, but looking at Conte, looking at the celebrations after Lautaro's goal, Inter have got an incredible chance. I don't want to say if they lose it, they've blown it. But if Inter win the derby, they can only throw the league title away. As for the Coppa Italia, I just hope it's an entertaining game, to be quite honest. I hope Gigi Buffon plays, and the reason for that is that when I commentate on the matches, I wear the headphones, obviously, and get the feed straight from the stadium, and I hear everything Buffon says, and it's very entertaining. I'm more looking forward to sort of having a sort of really close-up experience of the fantastic utterings of Gigi Buffon in goal, to be quite honest. I'm looking forward to that more than the matches, because to be honest with you, when you're commentating on matches, you can't really enjoy them. You have to make sure you don't get names wrong or commit any mega blunders with names of presidents or players or anything like that. So I hope the final's entertaining. I hope Gigi Buffon keeps me entertained, and that will be enough for me.
No, I want to reply. I'm not. No, you give who's going to win it? Come on, make a prediction. Who's going to win the Coppa Italia and who's going to win the Scudetto?
Okay, the Scudetto is going to be okay. I'm gonna. Well, you asked for it, Nima, so I'm going to jinx you.
Yes,
Inter are going to win the Scudetto.
Okay, and Milan will be second and third, and Juve third, or how's it going to go?
Juventus second, Milan third, Napoli fourth. That's enough. And for the Coppa Italia, Atalanta are excited and have the Indian are exciting rather and excited, arguably, and have the Indian sign over Juventus. But in the final, I think Juventus will be far too strong. Their bench will be far too strong, and if Atalanta lose, it'll make Papu Gomez happy.
Okay. That's we'll have to wait and see. Thank you so much, Sheridan, for coming on. Have you got anything else that's coming up that you want to share or anything? The floor is yours.
Well, bless you. Yeah, I tell you what, the Champions Journal magazine. I've done some articles for them in the last few months, and it's a relatively new magazine, and Inter, they haven't had the best relationship with the Champions League since winning it, because I know they are the last Italian side to lift it. But yeah, always, your listeners and you guys, keep an eye out for the Champions magazine, which is called Champions Journal. Other than that, I don't have a Twitter to undersell anymore.
Unfortunately,
as you know, I closed that because I thought, life is finite, and I'd wasted enough time on Twitter. And also, it's not as entertaining with Trump anymore. Without Trump. So no, other than that, I wish all you guys Inter fans the best for the rest of the season, but I haven't really got much more to add.
Thank you very much, Sheridan. It's always a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for coming on.
Cheers, my pleasure. Bye guys.
Take care. Ciao. Right, let's talk about the Juventus game. Is pretty much, it went exactly like we discussed last week. I don't think there's much to add. It was a game where they kind of canceled each other out, and Juventus, easily and slowly sailed to the final. And that's not really what I want to talk about, and I don't think that's what anyone wants to listen to. What we want to talk about is the fact that Inter are top of the Serie A in February for the first time in 11 years. And they also, after beating a very good Lazio side, who, for large parts, I've watched the game twice. I watched the first half 3 times, preparing for the show and other things. What I can tell you is that from where I stand, I'm incredibly impressed by how Antonio Conte has got Inter's defense and balance right. That's something I've been hammering on about on this show and elsewhere, the lack of balance, and how Inter can now absorb pressure and press and not crumble and fall apart, and how they go through, as Will always likes to say, sa gestire la partita. They know how to handle these difficult situations in the game, and there were quite a few in the first half against Lazio, but Inter were never panicked. They were calm, cool, collected, organized, and disciplined. That's all on Antonio Conte. And for him to do so, as we've said, as I've said previously on this show, to do so in these difficult situation when the ownership question is when who owns the club is under question, when players haven't been paid, when all this speculation about who's going to buy Inter, who's not going to buy Inter, are they going to afford, are they going to default, is Inter going to go into administration? All these things going on, to be able to unite and focus a team is absolutely fantastic. But focusing more on the game against Lazio, I'm keen to. I want to start with you, Mo. Watching that, how controlled and cool wasn't that performance? And didn't it remind you a lot of the game against Juve that Inter won in the Serie A, of course?
Yeah, I think it definitely reminded me of a lot of like the type of games that I really like. I can't remember who on Twitter yesterday said I really would. I'll check it up and credit them. But someone said, I think it was Andrew Barker. Yeah, Andrew Barker said, my favorite type of match is the type of match where commentators think that Inter don't deserve to win, but Inter do win anyway. So really, this is like, it was a vintage gritty performance. Not even gritty, because Lazio had a lot of the possession. For whatever reason, the BN/ESPN commentators seem to believe that Lazio yesterday were, were the shit on wheels. They were amazing, and everything they did was absolute. But really, they had very little. Inter's defensive shape was so controlled, like you say, so balanced, and I really enjoyed the performance. I don't know if it's close to if it's similar to the Juventus match, where we did not give Juventus as much freedom to play their football and shut them out. I think Inter were much more aggressive. I think yesterday in both matches, Conte managed the game extremely well. I think the fact that Lazio continued pressing high with their defensive shape, especially after Radu's injury and during the warm-up, really made sure that Inter would really hurt them on the break. But there was never, for me anyway, beyond the nervousness of the fact that, like we had spoken earlier, the fact that Milan had lost against Spezia, the fact that Juve had lost against Napoli, and this was finally Inter's chance to surpass and take the top of the table. Beyond that general edginess and the feeling of the high stakes feeling of the match, I think if you do replay the match and watch it, alone in a vacuum, you'll find that, like you say, it was very controlled. Inter gave Lazio possession. And just destroyed them on the break. So I think when you look at the Juventus game of a few weeks ago, Inter schooled Juventus by taking control of the match, taking control of possession, really dominating the chances, so on and so forth. But yesterday it was a different approach completely to the game. I think it was extremely well managed, well gestured by Conte. I think they're both excellent examples, like you say, of a team that's well balanced and well thought out, but different expressions of the same sort of identity and end goal at the end.
We have to talk about the so-called controversy surrounding the penalty, which I genuinely don't understand after you look at the replay, how you can still argue it, especially after Simone Inzaghi and Pepe Reina both went out and said that the penalty was clear. But, some people will do that. But I want to ask with you, Mike, can you disperse the doubts as to why it is a penalty? Can you explain why it is a penalty? Because there are a lot of people, because you've been a referee, you're a FIFA referee. Can you explain why that is a penalty?
Yeah, well, I was never a FIFA referee, but okay. I was pretty up there though. But listen, I think there's a lot of people saying, "Oh, it's a clear penalty." I don't want to go in that realm saying it was a clear as day penalty. No, it was not. But let's when you look at the video multiple times, yes. I believe the defender was Wesley Hoyt, right? And he made a play on the ball. he definitely made, nice contact with the ball, but it's what the initial contact was.
Exactly.
And the initial contact was he made contact with Lukaku, and that's the only thing that really matters.
Lautaro.
Sorry, Lautaro. My bad. With Lautaro, that's the most important part of this whole debacle of people deciding, whether this was a legitimate penalty. And at first glance, it did look like it was a great tackle, and myself included. I thought, they're gonna overturn this for sure.
Me too.
But I would say once we got a good look at, there was one angle that really showed that he definitely came through the side first, and as he was going, you could see Lautaro going down even before the ball had even been played. So I do think it was a pretty legitimate tackle. He was going for the ball and everything, but you're still responsible for what your body does, and he made contact, and I think the right call was made. Now here's the big question: is if this was not called a penalty by Fabri, who the referee was, I'm not 100% convinced they would have overturned it, because then you bring into the aspect of clear and obvious error. Yeah. So that's where I think that potentially Fabri's decision to call it a penalty right away is why this stood. Had it been the other way around, I don't think it's as clear they would have called this a penalty.
And I'm glad you say that, because to me it is a very tight call, but it's ultimately the right call. Which I interpret is what you're saying, and I think it was one of those nights where, in these big matches, in these big games, the episodes, as the Italians call them, are the ones that decide the games. And yesterday the episodes were on Inter's, were in Inter's favor, and not on Lazio, and not in Lazio's favor at all. I'm thinking also. Yeah, exactly. No, but exactly. And this is it. This isn't, what I mean by the episodes is, for example, when Brozovic, sweeps the ball, even before it hits Lazzari, Lukaku is onside by the slightest of margins. These kinds of margins, these tiny details going your way, is what separated Inter and Lazio, in my opinion, because the way I see it, this game was decided by those episodes.
Sorry, Nima, I don't want to cut you off. Do you want to talk about that one as well? Because there was a lot of potential of there being a crazy controversy with that goal. Had Lukaku if he was an inch or two closer to the opponent's goal line and he was in an offside position, there would have been a lot of doubt whether or not that goal would have counted.
What about because I'm glad you brought it up, because I wanted to ask you about that, because Brozovic is playing the ball sideways. He's not playing it forward, and it's ricocheted off Lazzari to Lukaku. When the ball ricochets off, what's the rules there? Can you explain a little bit there?
Yeah, so here the referee has to determine whether or not the defender, who I believe was it Lazzari, right? Lazzari came off of, So he has to determine whether or not Lautaro is making a play on the ball. If he is making a distinct, some sort of action, where if he is directly playing it to Lukaku, who's in an offside position, in that sense, then no, it would not have been offside. But however, had it been just a regular deflection, and Lazzari was not aware or just went off him without making any type of movement, then we could have definitely looked at that being in an onside position, no matter where Lukaku was. So if the referee just has to determine whether or not he's making a play on the ball or not. And I think that in this situation, it would have been so tough. And I was thinking about it because at first I was trying to determine, number one, the most important thing was whether or not Lukaku was in an offside position or not, and he wasn't. So that kind of
became a moot point. Yeah, it
became a moot point. But I was preparing myself to talk about this because I've had this situation when I've been on the field, and I've had this exact same thing happen before. And I've had to talk with my assistant referee and say, listen, I'm not 100% sure. Do you think that the defender made any type of play on the ball to put it over, or was it just a deflection? If it's just some kind of deflection, and he's offside position, then he's offside. But if he makes any type of play, then that's where you're going to get in some gray areas. So fortunately, we didn't have to deal with that, because this could have been a total mess had it been important in the scoreline.
For sure. And like I said, these are the episodes we're talking about. And on this day, like you said, for once, because Inter have been pretty unlucky, they broke in Inter's favor. Because before that, in my opinion, I think this was a very fascinating game tactically between two coaches that put on a brilliant display. And as Mo wrote in his preview, they remind these two teams, the way they're built and constructed, remind a lot of each other. And obviously, so in my opinion, this game is kind of conditioned by those episodes. And Lazio were very, very good. I'm keen to hear what you think, how you view this, how you view this, Will, how you experienced this game, and do you agree with what I've said or not?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can definitely say that Lazio were unlucky to be 2-0 down at half-time, given the way the game had gone. Although if we're going to talk about episodes, we do have to say that I never thought Lazio were too likely to score despite having the ball. And the one goal they did score was a complete fluke as well. So it's not as if they were completely unlucky in every department in this match. I don't think we'd have conceded had that free kick not ricocheted in, because I remember maybe one save from Handanovic, and it wasn't a Handanovic miracle. It was a decent save on, I think it was Immobile in the first half. So I think there's no doubt that Inter are deserved winners. I agree with what Mo was saying about when people don't think we deserve to win, it's maybe more enjoyable, because during the first half, the commentators were all being very sort of sympathetic, should we say, with Lazio, and yet we were 2-0 up. So that was quite enjoyable. But no, I think this was a fantastic win. Technically, tactically, emotionally, I think there were so many good signs from this performance. Lazio had won 6 in a row. I feared it a lot, and I was positively surprised, because I think Conte got it all right. The one thing that you can't do with Lazio is leave space in behind your defence, and he didn't do that. So that's the way to play them. You've seen how many times we've seen this season Immobile being fed by Luis Alberto or Milinkovic, or him feeding one of the others, or Caicedo or Correa. And funnily enough, Lazio's goal comes from a free kick, which they won when they did get a counter-attack, because we'd gone forward. So I think that just proves that was the perfect way to play the game. It might have looked a bit extreme at times. There was a stat that came up on the television that I was watching after 75 minutes, which said that we had 212 passes, to Lazio's 520. So this was clearly a decision from Conte to give the ball to Lazio and not to press them too hard, not to let Pepe Reina have the ball, and to let their defenders come forward and expose themselves. So I think he got it right. I wonder if Inzaghi might reconsider his decision to play Wesley Hutt when Acerbi got injured, rather than maybe Musacchio, because that
Lulic got injured.
Stefan Radu got injured in the warm-up, didn't he?
Yes. No. Yeah, Radu. Sorry. Radu. I thought you said Acerbi.
Yeah, but Acerbi moved to the left. So
okay.
Because he moved. Acerbi would have been in the middle, and then he moved. He put Hutt in the middle and then you had Acerbi playing this very strange sort of left back role in the first half. Anyway, no, I think Conte got it all right. It was just perfect. I think before the game, if you'd said we're going to win and we're going to get none of those players booked ahead of the derby, I'd have said, don't be silly, I'll take one of those. But we've ended up getting both. We had some great performances from Perisic, who was really impressive in a defensive sense on Lazzari. Skriniar was fantastic. He was his usual wall. I mentioned Erickson when I spoke to Sheridan. I mean, what better birthday present could he have wished for yesterday on his 29th birthday? There's so many good things to talk about. I really don't find much at all. Maybe this is the first time, apart from the Juventus game this season, where I can't find anything to criticise in this team.
No, there really isn't. There really isn't. And the thing, I was worried when I've said on this podcast ever since the Fiorentina game that Barella, Brozovic, and Erickson is my ideal midfield for Inter right now. But I was unsure if it works against the better teams. Definitely, I wanted to see it against Udinese, Sampdoria, Parma, Bologna. Teams that kind of shrink the space and back and defend deep. But I was a bit worried if it would work against the bigger sides, against the top sides, because they're very good and they hurt any mistakes you make. And it turned out to be absolutely perfect, because I was worried that Sergej Milinkovic-Savic would nullify Erickson. Christian Eriksen for pace and for speed and sheer physicality, but that never materialized, because for every time the more they pressed Marcelo Brozovic, the more Christian Eriksen showed his intelligence to find space to get the ball and to dictate, especially in the first half, where he completely dictated the tempo of the midfield, playing killer pass after killer pass. And in my opinion, he was the best player on the pitch in the first half. Then in the second half, obviously, Simone Inzaghi adjusted and Lazio dominated for most of the second half without creating anything. Because Inter were so sound defensively, as we've already said. But it was a fascinating game from so many levels. And
I want to say something on Eriksen, if that's all right. Sorry to jump in, Nima.
Go.
But there are two things that stuck out to me in particular. The first is, I reckon that the best way to get the best out of Eriksen is not to expect magic out of Eriksen at every point. I think this was something that we as interisti, as pundits, as viewers, as whatever, there's been so much expectation on every touch being some poetry in motion or whatever. So really, it's fine if he has a very strong performance or a decent showing or a good game. Brozovic does not have a 9 out of 9 match every game. Not every single assist that he makes is incredible. So not even Pirlo did that, So it's okay. So I think a big part of the problem with Eriksen had been this, huge expectations, a level of expectation that's been placed on his shoulders, and I think that in turn didn't allow him to express himself so well. So I think that's one thing. So like you said yesterday, his performance was great. It was excellent, but it wasn't anything phenomenal. It was just a very strong showing, The second thing that I noticed yesterday was something that Eriksen was doing, and we'd spoken about Eriksen helping himself, not helping his cause personally, but I saw him doing some stuff, especially in the defensive shape when he was covering off on the left flank along with Perisic. He would be lying inside, like standing inside in the Inter's 18-yard box. I can't remember. It was probably Milinkovic-Savic then who would probably pick up the ball. He'd immediately run out to cover and limit his pace and limit his movement. Such defensive awareness and work the guy didn't do. And we make fun of Conte for saying, the player doesn't know Italian football and he needs to adapt to Italian football. But it's true. These sort of responsibilities are not expected of you in the Premier League.
Absolutely not.
So yesterday was the first time I saw Eriksen give in a complete team performance, not just performing when he was with the ball or when the team was in its offensive shape and he was trying to pick up attackers with passes or whatever. He had a complete performance, as did Brozovic under the Spalletti Renaissance. It was Brozovic was a bit lost before then, and once he found his right position and his right role and responsibilities, he's able to shine. So yeah, we can
say that Christian Eriksen is to Antonio Conte what Luciano Spalletti or Marcelo Brozovic was to Luciano Spalletti, in that sense that they've kind of rehabilitated them, if we so to speak.
Hopefully,
because both of them, because if we're perfectly honest, both of them were kind of on the way out before they got rehabilitated, and it was also a championship year where the World Cup in Russia, where Brozovic was integral in taking Croatia to the World Cup final. Denmark fans. Yeah. Nice omen.
Brozovic was on a plane in January of that season, going to Seville. I mean, it was. We had that story that almost sounded like, I remember on that deadline day, there was someone that said, like, basically Spalletti has gone on the plane and dragged him off. It was like he was literally on the runway, and he was on deadline day, and Inter decided that
I would pay. There is no amount of money in this world that I am not willing to pay to watch Luciano Spalletti running into a runway at an airport, chasing Marcelo Brozovic and dragging him off the plane. Like, if this happened, please let there be video coverage of this.
Let's call Malpensa and see if they still got it on footage.
CCTV.
I mean, this has to be seen. Any footage of Spalletti needs the world needs this.
I love that nutcase so much.
Me too. He's out of his mind. I love him. Yeah. I mean, his duck, Snow White. is when he sits under this weird tree, which has got like it looks like an art installation with football shirts and stuff hanging around. It's just he's so I love him, absolutely love him. He's out of his mind, and him and Rocco Commisso at Fiorentina. Please, football gods, make this happen. Like this, we need this. We need this entertainment.
And it's his 2 Champions League qualifications that's helped us be top of the table today. I think we should always give a nod to Bucciano. But I thought Conte's comments on Erickson yesterday were very significant, because I think he was pretty much saying what Mo said about how this was his first team performance. He said, he's got an angrier leg, which I thought was a nice turn of Italian, sort of trying to talk up his newfound sort of aggression or intensity, but also saying, I'm much calmer now when I feel much calmer picking him. These are things that a month ago you'd never have dreamed of hearing him say. So I think it's really encouraging. And, if Arturo Vidal is not fit for that derby on Sunday, who's to say that he won't stay? In the last 7 days, he started against Juventus and Lazio. And these are matches that we kind of assumed he'd never feature in for as long as he stayed here. And suddenly things are changing. I'm
glad you said that, because let's move on to that derby, because this is the first Scuderby that Inter and Milan are playing in the spring or late winter for 10 years. The last one was obviously the 10-11 season when Milan beat Inter 3-0 in what Leonardo referred to as the maledetta settimana, the damned week, where his 4-2 fantasia turned out to be 4-2 sto cazzo, against basically costing Inter the league and gifting away a quarterfinal place in the Champions League by hemorrhaging to Schalke 2-5 by playing that ridiculous formation that he did.
I was at that game.
Yeah, I've seen that on your social media. I feel bad for you. You got to see the most beautiful goal by an Inter player probably ever. When Dejan Stankovic scores that volley from what is that? it's you got that is absolutely insane.
Great memories and some bad ones from that game. That's for sure.
It's classic Inter, isn't it? There's no in between. It's either that was the most Inter thing ever. It's like the most beautiful goal ever, and then heartbreak. This is the last time Inter and Milan played a Scuderby. That game Milan won. Antonio Cassano, Ibra, and Pato. But now I feel with Inter passing Milan and Milan, the performance they had against Spezia, that was the worst performance I've seen from Milan since Atalanta destroyed them before Ibrahimovic signed. That was absolutely unwatchable. They are completely out of form. If that game is anything to go by, I doubt that they will approach the derby in the same way. I absolutely am certain they won't. But it absolutely raises some interesting questions, and it changes the mentality of this game going into it. Because before that, had Milan won, Inter would have been chasing the game. Now Milan are chasing the game, because they have to beat Inter to go ahead. The only thing I'm worried about, and this is what I don't want. I do not want a draw between those two teams, because if they draw, Juve will win the title, no doubt in my mind, because they'll only be 3 points potentially behind both of these teams, having to play both of these teams. And that's just classic Juve, just rubbing their hands when the titles are decided and put in a run. I don't want a draw, and that's my biggest fear, that I think that we will see a draw. What about you, Mo? Where are you on this?
Yeah, so squeaky bum time. It's difficult to really dissociate expectation from desire, from fear of jinxing, from whatever. It's very complicated. It's very complicated if you overthink it. I think quite simply we're the better team. So this is how I looked at the Lazio game. Lazio are in form, six match winning streak, so on and so forth. But the teams are very similar man for man, except that when you tally both sides up, Inter are better at almost every position. So, objectively, the better team should win. And in fact, this is what happened at the end. I think if you look at it objectively, Milan form aside, the the absolute tear they'd been on until very recently. Just put all of that stuff aside. If you just look at this Milan side, at their coach, at where they are in their project, at how the first derby went earlier in September, October, I can't remember which month it was. I think Inter should definitely win this game. Especially since, even though it's an away derby, it's played behind closed doors. There's no fan advantage in the stadium. So I think objectively we're a better team. We're in better form. We are peaking at the right time. I think Milan will actually have to play a midweek Europa League game as well.
Against Stankovic, Red Belgrade.
Against I don't know how to pronounce the name, the Serbian name.
Crvena Zvezda.
They've been rebranded now.
Tell them to be aggressive, Deki.
Let's go Red Star.
So I think, I honestly think, putting my jitters, my personal jinx fears aside, I think this should be a convincing, commanding win for Inter. But because it's a derby, because it's such a loaded thing, I'm very worried to predict something too. I'm too nervous to predict something too much in Inter's favor. But so I'll go for a tight Inter 2-1 win with Dirty Ibra scoring a goal anyway.
He's definitely scoring. He's scoring, and we know that Lukaku
No. Thank God he's not marked by Kolarov. Thank God Bastoni's on the pitch.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, that's something else that I wanted to praise Conte for, because Brozovic, Barella, and Bastoni, the three Bs, they were so controlled and disciplined. They didn't even go. It wasn't even close to a yellow card. They were so concentrated and disciplined, and that's clearly Conte probably threatening to kill them or something if they did something. But God bless him for that, because that's what I was nervous about after that 3-1 goal. I was like, Antonio, please, for the love of God, take off Barella, Bastoni, or Brozovic, or preferably all three, and he didn't, and it was the right move because there was no need for it. But I do think that there's no doubt in my mind that Ibrahimovic will score, and I think Lukaku will score as well. And this is I still can't shake off the feeling that Juve will win this Scudetto, and that's why I think it's going to be a 1-1. I'm hoping Inter win 3-1, but I think it's going to be 1-1, and I think it's going to be Lukaku and Ibrahimovic to score. Let me put it to you this way: I will officially ascend to Mo's Inter are going to win the Scudetto side of this ship if. And I've been looking at this. Inter play Milan, Genoa, and Parma away. Milan play Inter, Roma, and Fiorentina before the international break, or I think it's just around then. At which point, if Inter go into the following game after these three against Atalanta with a 5 to 7 point advantage over Milan, or whoever is in second place, I think Inter have a good shot. I think Inter are the favorites to win the Scudetto. Absolutely, but getting there is the difficult part, and I think that the draw is where this is what I fear the most. A draw. It will feel like a defeat for me, a draw, because this is as I said, the Juve are just rubbing their hands if it's a draw. So that's where I am on that. What about you, Will? Where are you results wise, and what do you think? What do you expect to see?
Well, I don't think it will be a blowout win as much as I would like that. I can't believe that Milan will be anything like as lifeless as they were against Spezia at the weekend. We heard reports today that Ibra is furious, and there's been meetings at Milanello between him and Pioli to have an inquest in what on earth went on. So you've got to expect some kind of reaction. And I joked about the Europa League, but they're going to play a very weakened team. So I don't think that'll have a huge impact, that Europa League match, on what happens in the derby. So I expect a very tough match that's in the balance pretty much right until the end. I think that I agree with Mo in that we should win this match. We are a better team on paper, and we're in better form. And we're now top of the table, so it's up to Milan in a sense to try and force the issue if it is a draw heading into the last 20 minutes, and that might help us. So I think it's all set up quite well. I think we've proven in the last couple of months or so, pretty much ever since we had that discussion pre-Juventus about how we didn't have balls basically in the big matches, we've done it. We've beaten Juventus, we've beaten Milan in the cup, and we've now beaten Lazio as well. And none of them were particularly, fluky. The Milan game was close, but I think we all agree that we were the better team for most of that game. So these weren't repeats of that match against Napoli where we were hanging on against 10 men. So there's definitely been a real kind of improvement in these last few weeks, and that makes me more confident. That makes me more secure going into a match like this. Personally, I don't think, if it is a draw, and obviously with predicting results, you need to see what happens. If Inter are 1-0 up with 10 minutes left, then of course, no, a draw is not a good result. But in a overarching sense, given the fixtures that we have coming up, I don't think it's any longer a result that would leave me, devastated, because the calendar is going to flip in the next few weeks. Milan have Roma and Napoli. And of course, them and Juventus, this is the one thing we haven't spoken about yet, them and Juventus both have Europe coming up, and we don't. So we're now entering the period of the season where we should have the advantage that Lazio had last season until the lockdown came along, because they have one game a week and all the advantages that brings. So I think a draw is decent. I think definitely if I'm going to back one team, if I had to write one team's name on a piece of paper to win the league, it is Inter. As much as that terrifies me to say, I think all the evidence at the moment does point towards it. But I think we might edge this. I agree with you with Lukaku and Ibra. They're both going to be really fired up after what happened a few weeks ago. Incidentally, we heard today that Lukaku has had his interview with the Federation as part of their investigation into this match. We think we're going to get a verdict after the derby next week. So, they're both going to be very keen to do their talking on the pitch. But I think in addition to Lukaku and Ibra, we're going to have Barella on the score sheet as well, who again was sensational in that match against Lazio. So I feel, I don't like being optimistic ahead of derbies. That there's always this train of thought that when you're the favourites heading into the derby, it's a problem because then the other team are going to turn you over. But no, I feel reasonably. I don't think we're going to lose. Let me say that. Not least because for the first time in a derby this season, we will have Bastoni and not Kolarov, which is big. And we have a Perisic who, unlike in October, looks pretty good now. So I'm feeling cautiously optimistic.
So Bastoni giving away a penalty and getting sent off in the 3rd minute, then?
Yeah, and then paving the way for a 3-0 defeat.
As you do,
exactly. Yeah. Right, Mike, I want to hear your thoughts.
Well, look, 2 months ago, I was pretty upset that Inter went out of Champions League, and whenever they go out of Champions League, I'm pretty upset for a couple of days. But right now, I think it's a blessing. I'm telling you right now, I feel so confident that Inter only has to worry about the Scudetto right now, while Juve and Milan still has other competitions going on, and I think that's going to be the determining factor down the stretch. And that's why I'm feeling confident right now. I haven't felt this confident in a long time. This was a perfect weekend. It was ultimately everything went right. I don't think if there's a draw in this match, which is, it's very, very possible. I think it's a little more possible than the odds are going to give us, but I don't think it's the worst case scenario. I think that it's. I would not be feeling that much. I won't be upset if there's a draw, put it that way. I'll feel a little bit disappointed. I won't be upset. Now, I think we're at the point now where, Milan have overachieved a lot this year, where I don't think they're the contender for the Scudetto anymore. And I know they're only 2 points or just behind Inter now, but I think that it's between Inter and Juve. I think Juve's schedule the next month is extremely favorable for them, and I don't see how they don't pick up 9 points in their next 3 games. So I think they're going to be right on our tails. That's why I think getting 3 points in this game is so important. However, that being said, I think the draw is probably for me the most likely scenario, and a 1-1 or a 2-2 game is where I'm leaning. And Skriniar coming off of probably. I watched the game again this morning against Lazio, and I got to say, I think that's his best game of the season, if not one of his best. He was a wrecking machine, so I'm going to go with him to score against Milan on a corner. on a header in this game.
Okay. I'm all this. Yeah. Okay. I hope you're right.
You don't want to ruin this positive vibe, do you?
No, I don't. I really don't. I really don't. And I really don't. And I'm not as confident because this is a different animal. This isn't the school. This isn't the Serie A that we've seen for the past 15, 20 years. This is a Serie A. The ones that are more like the ones that Mo and I used to watch when we grew up, and that's a completely different animal. And logic would say that, well, given everything that has happened, Inter should go on and win this game. But I don't think there's something that just doesn't compute in my head about this, and I don't know. And the derby's always special, regardless of late league table position. But it's going to be incredibly fascinating. There's going to be fireworks. It's going to be passionate. It's going to be entertaining. I think it's going to be two games. I think it's going to be two teams that go out there to win. That's what I think. I don't think either of these teams is happy with a draw. I think both of them realize a draw is a defeat for both of them in terms of it's a gift for Juve. And I don't think they want that. I think both of these teams want to win. And I think that's what maybe they might cancel each other out that way. But I hope it doesn't happen. As I said, I think 1-1, but I hope 3-1. But anyway, let's move on to the part of the show where we pay tribute, rip the piss out of, and criticize someone or something heavily in the world of football, starting with the positivity. It's presented by Mr. Positivity, Mr. Mohamed Massa.
He works a lot, he's intelligent, and he surprises people sometimes with his ideas. Not easy to find one person of these qualities.
My goodness, what a week to pick from. It's there's so much to choose from. So I'll give a few honorable mentions. First of all, I'd like to say that this is the first time I got a special request from a listener for a Moratti of the week, but it wasn't my choice. But it'll be one of the honorable mentions. Honorable mentions are the Antonio Conte bird to Agnelli. It's phenomenal. I mean, this man has given us so much content. We joked about it last time I was on, I think. So much content has been, from squirming on the bench when he was suspended to porca troia della vita, to the whole.
Arturo, gioca e non rompere il cazzo.
Yeah, exactly. It's been amazing content by the Conte machine. Then there's the what Michael was just talking about, the Skriniar stop against Lazio. That was just so commanding, so confident, so perfectly placed. Timing was amazing. He just shut the ball down. It was perfect. That alone deserves a mention.
That one on Correa, right? That was the one in the first half. Yeah. I don't think I've ever seen a better defensive play like this season he read that play so well. It was perfect, and it saved a goal. So
yeah, surgical placement of the foot, surgical placement, but extremely physical as well. Like the ball was not moving. The entire momentum of the attack just got shut down. So that particular move. And then there's the listener request, which was the Lukaku run and assist to Lautaro, which was phenomenal. Phenomenal. Like
art, poetry in motion. Poetry in motion.
Like blowing past Parolo with and not just speed and physicality to be able to put him behind him and make sure he covers the ball, and then picking up Lautaro's run without showing the defenders that he's looking at him, so that no one covers Lautaro. They all make sure that all the attention is on Lukaku. He manages to really slide the ball. It was a perfect goal. Amazing goal. But for me, my Moratti of the week is the fact that the 3Bs come into the derby with no suspensions.
Yes.
You spoke about that and how Conte must have really, drilled it in their minds on how to play. And we're talking about, particularly in Brozovic and Barella's case, guys who are, they really throw themselves about. This is part of how they contribute positively to the team.
Yeah.
And for them to have a decent performance, like a very strong performance against Lazio, both players, where you don't feel like they're holding back, but still be aware and responsible to the point where they don't pick up. I mean, you've seen Brozovic's body language when he gets frustrated at calls, increasingly reckless challenges as matches, as he loses tackles, and then eventually he picks up a yellow by accumulation of errors. None of that against Lazio. So I think the fact that we go into the derby with Bastoni, Barella, and Brozovic, in light of how on a nice edge their fates were, is probably my Moratti of the week this week.
Amen. I just have a special mention as well. I think sportsmanship is something that is quite often lost in this day and age, and I think what Pepe Reina and Simone Inzaghi did, saying that it was a penalty, was important. It was very classy, even though I absolutely love the fact that Simone Inzaghi was so upset that even though he said that it was a penalty, he was still annoyed with the referee for not going and checking using VAR to see if it was a penalty. So he wasn't upset with the outcome. He was upset with the term, with how it was, how that decision came to be, which I absolutely love about him. The fact that he's so cranky. Right, let's move on to something much more comical. This week's Frog, which will be presented by Mr. Michael Gallo.
È clamoroso! Autogol di Ranocchia!
All right, so I saw this and I yesterday, and I had to do it. It was just I laughed my ass off. And yesterday was Valentine's Day. And, when you log on to social media yesterday, you'll be seeing lots of pictures of flowers and pictures of people putting their loved ones on there. Spending another year with my Valentine, so happy to be with them. And, it really makes us, a lot of people will be like, oh, more posts, all this stuff. And it just gets overwhelming. You're just like, you shut off social media for a while. But I saw this one post that really intrigued me. It was from Blaise Matuidi. And he posted a picture of his wife saying, Happy Valentine's Day. But he did a screenshot of the picture instead of posting a picture of him and his wife. And you could see in the screenshot on Twitter that he actually went on Google and typed in Matuidi's girlfriend on Google. And instead of having a picture of him saved on his phone, it actually is him Googling his wife. And it literally says in the search bar, Matuidi's wife. And then he tweeted the screenshot, but he included the Google part where it says Matuidi's wife. And I don't know, I guess he didn't notice, or he might have deleted it afterwards. I don't know, but I saw it. I'm like, doesn't this guy have a picture of his wife on it saved on his phone? He had to Google a picture of his wife. And I don't know if he realized it at first or a while, but it's just, you got to have a picture of your wife on your phone. It just has to happen. Unless you've got, unless you don't love your wife. So he actually had to go on Google and find a picture of his wife. And he actually looked in the search bar and it says Matuidi's wife. And sure enough, the first picture that came up, he posted on Twitter saying this is it. But the Google search bar is there.
Oh, God. It's so cringe. That's so embarrassing. Yeah, I like that. That is quintessentially frog behavior. Right, let's move on to something much more negative. This week's Moggi, which will be presented by Mr. William Beckman.
Yeah, this week's Moggi is very much on brand, respecting the historical roots of the Moggi, because it's Juventus. Would you believe it? Yeah, I mean, we touched on it earlier in the show, the rather strange and bizarre circumstances that followed the match in the Coppa Italia. So I just wanted to give a collective shout out to Juve and everything they sort of concocted around that match on Tuesday. I mean, we don't know everything that went on. None of us were stood in the stands, but certainly a lot of the reports that have come out since that match have suggested that Juventus kind of had a plan to try and disrupt Antonio Conte on the bench during that match. There's been talk that the provocations and the insults that he was subjected to were kind of from minute one, as opposed to something that was triggered by an incident during the game. We have heard that potentially Andrea Agnelli has been very unpleasant to Conte, both during the match and after the match when he came down to quote unquote celebrate Juventus's qualification to the final. You've got players on the Juventus bench who have been reportedly peppering him with unpleasant words. You've got Leonardo Bonucci, who somehow had the cheek to tell Conte to respect the referee after Lautaro kicked Bernardeschi's leg and was correctly not given a penalty. But you had Conte apparently being called a clown and potentially something worse by Agnelli. So that was all, that was the context of his middle finger at halftime, which obviously he was very good to apologise for, Conte, in his press conference, but he did make it clear that he was provoked. Funnily enough, none of that went into the fourth official's match report after the game, which is really shocking. Really shocked me to my core that Daniele Chiffi didn't, having assured Conte that he had heard everything, somehow none of that made it into the official's report, which is why the Federation have had to open an investigation themselves. But it doesn't stop there, because you then have other stories that come out on Wednesday, or was it? I think this one was Friday actually, when there was the one of the pitch side reporters for Rai Sport, who was at the game, gave us some context to this middle finger that Conte had been shown to be giving to Agnelli. He says that he went back into his production van after the match to find out, having seen that this video was on social media of Conte giving Agnelli the finger, and he wanted to know why it hadn't gone out on Rai, why they hadn't shown it in their post-match coverage. And it turns out they didn't have those images because the camera that picked up Conte doing his unpleasant gesture was a Juventus camera that they had fixed on Conte for this match, which kind of sounds like a kind of spy Big Brother job that they've done on him. Because
this is what they always do, Will.
This is what they always do.
This isn't new. This is what they've always done.
Yeah, and that tallies with what you've heard from Inter sources who've used the word trap when they've spoken to them. I mean, the creating the atmosphere for Conte to be annoyed, filming him so that any reaction is suddenly tweetable. Whereas obviously none of the Juventus insults made it into the social media world. And then of course, number three, the third part of this lovely trilogy of hatred and bile is Fabio Paratchi, who had two different stories written about him this week. Firstly, there were claims, which have been denied, that he threatened to hit Lele Oriali, our team manager, in the tunnel at half time, saying, Oriali supposedly was telling Juventus players, officials, whoever's in the tunnel, to sort of lower the temperature. And Paratchi responded apparently by saying, stay clear, otherwise I might hit you. And then obviously we got this unconfirmed story that was going around in Milan that he's been trying to tap up Niccolò Barella for God knows how long, since he joined Inter 18 months ago, and this was supposedly part of Conte and Oriali's anger because Barella obviously reported this to them. So just the whole smorgasbord of crap.
I absolutely love this. This is Juve v Inter. You get, again, I keep saying this, as I told you privately as well. This is the Inter and Juve drama that we've grown up with. To me, the past 20 years, the past 15 years have been nothing. It's been a cakewalk. This is Inter and Juve. This is how they behave when they are both going for titles, and I absolutely love it. I hate the sanitization of football. I hate this, the corporate. The answers where everything is so sanitized, and the most difficult questions they ask is, what's your favorite color and do you prefer pizza or pasta? I like this. This is the Serie A I grew up with, and I love the animosity. I love the pettiness. I eat this up. I love it, and I love how Inter reply. I love how Juve then go on the attack again, and then how they use their different media connections to disrupt each other. I just love it. I just absolutely love it. And I wish that Inter would do the same. I wish they would have a camera planted on Andrea Agnelli and Paratchi, and especially Paratchi, because his behavior during the games is pretty interesting. So return the favor. That's the only way. If you let bad behavior go unpunished, you're kind of condoning it. So I want Inter to return the favor.
And let's remember that obviously Juventus versus Inter will take place on match day 37 of the 38-game league season.
And you wonder why, Mo, I think that Juve are going to win the title. I mean, this has got 97-98 written all over it. Right.
May the 16th. Clear your diaries.
Yes.
Or fill them, whichever you want to say.
whichever you prefer. No, I mean that going into that game, Inter have to be at least 4 points clear if they're going to win the title, because they're not going to win that game. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
And of course, they play Milan 2 weekends before that. So
Yeah.
even if Juventus are somehow out of the title race, they will be the kingmakers.
Yeah,
In this Scudetto, they
Yeah.
can't be irrelevant until the
No.
final day of the season, whatever happens.
No. So that's how the cookie is crumbled this time. That's all we had time for this week. I'd like to thank Sheridan. I'd like to thank you, Mr. Michael Gallo. Always a pleasure to have you on and explain the details of refereeing and Inter generally.
A pleasure to join you guys again. Great week, perfect week for us, and let's hope that we get a big derby win on the weekend.
For sure. Mr. Mohamed Nassar.
Yeah, fantastic episode. Looking forward to the derby. Very strange to have a full week of no Inter for the first time in a long time. So looking forward to a bit of calm before the storm.
And Mr. William Beckman.
Thank you. Stay tuned to SempreInter.com for all the build-up to this Scuderby, and if Inter are sold for €10 in the meantime, we'll let you know. So please stay tuned.
Until next week, I'm your host Nima Tavallaey wishing you a good week, 3 points, a derby win, and sempre e solo Forza Inter.